I get asked a lot how I export my images for web, Instagram, Facebook, and other social media platforms. What are the settings I use to get crispy and detailed images, and the general workflow. There are several methods to export and sharpen your images, and in today's video I want to show you my favorite one-click easiest approach to do it. Hi everyone, what's going on? Exporting images directly from Lightroom or Capture One using the basic export module is quick and easy, with a few intuitive but very limited controls. On many occasions, when you upload them on social media, they look a bit soft, not very punchy and detailed. To get more options, you definitely need to switch to Photoshop, which has more advanced functionalities, but at this point things usually start to get complicated and the process can get overwhelming with a less intuitive multiple-step workflow. There is an easier and time-saving alternative right using Photoshop, specifically by using an amazing Photoshop plugin called Web Sharpener, which is a free and automates the process. This method is very beneficial, especially for landscape images with a lot of small details, but it almost works for any kind of image. Just to give you some context, when we export an image for the web, we need to apply a certain amount of sharpening based on the final output size, and the workflow usually involves several steps like convert to the sRGB color space, specifically suited for web sharing, resize the image, multiple step sharpening, cropping, remove metadata like the EXIF data of aperture, ISO, shutter speed and so on, and then save as a JPEG file with appropriate settings where to choose different compression ratios for image quality and other stuff. Okay, after this general introduction, we need to import our image in Photoshop, but before doing that, we need to install the Web Sharpener plugin. So we're going to open the Creative Cloud app, then click on Stock and Marketplace, then Plugins, and here we're going to type Web Sharpener. Here we go. This is the plugin we want to install, the Web Sharpener for Photoshop by the photographer Andreas Resch. Now we're going to click on Install and then OK. The plugin is now installed, and so let's open Photoshop. We can find the plugin panel selecting Plugins on the top bar menu in Photoshop and selecting Web Sharpener. The current version at the time of this video is the 2.0.2. To quickly access the panel, I'm gonna drag and drop it on the right toolbar so I can activate it by clicking on this tiny blue icon here. Before we deep dive into how to use the panel, we are going back to Lightroom and let's select the photo we want to export for Instagram. I think this one looks perfect, it has a ton of details. Okay, to open our image in Photoshop, we need to right-click over the image and select Edit In, and then Edit in Adobe Photoshop. Here we are. Let's take a look at its native resolution by selecting Image on the top menu and Image Size. So, as you can see, the width is 4160 pixels and the height is 5200 pixels. That's nice. This is our panel, and at the top we have the presets drop-down menu where to select a bunch of default presets and where you can add, of course, your custom ones. Right below we have the main settings section where we can input the export size in pixels based on the longer side, shorter side, width or height of the image. Then there is a sequence of checkboxes. The most important are duplicate image to preserve the original image, creating a duplicate before the sharpening stage, create an edge mask to protect high contrast and highlights to get over sharpened, to 8-bit to convert the image to 8-bit and the correct color space suited for the web, so the sRGB. Then we have the watermark section where we can load, position and apply our watermark using a custom PNG file. And with these two sliders, we can set the opacity and the space from the borders in pixels. The next section is the quick sharpening to set the two key values, the basic sharpening and details. Basic sharpening rules the sharpening that affects the bolder details of the image, and the details slider instead controls the amount of sharpening applied to the finer details. I will show you in a second the custom default settings I like to use. The following start and sharpening section is very similar to the previous one, and it provides a few more sliders to make some additional fine adjustments to the sharpening parameters. The last section we are gonna see is the batch sharpening. That's very handy to sharpen multiple images in a folder in one run by reducing the export time drastically. We will not touch the last section, advanced settings. This section is where you can fine-tune all the parameters that regulate the resizing and sharpening process. If you are not an advanced user, I strongly suggest keeping these settings as the default value. Now, let's say we want to export this shot for Instagram. Even though Instagram automatically compresses your content, it's always best to post your content with the optimal image size for the specific platform, so that the quality of your content will not be affected when Instagram compresses your image size. Instagram provides some guidelines on which is the best resolution to upload your images. For example, for images with portrait orientation, Instagram recommends an image ratio of 4:5 with a suggested resolution of 1080 pixels for the shorter side and consequently 1350 pixels for the longer one. If your image is longer than this ratio, Instagram will crop your content. I already cropped the image in Lightroom before opening it in Photoshop. Of course, you can crop it later on Instagram, but this is the workflow I prefer. Let's start by typing in the image size. We want to use 1080 pixels, that's the suggested size for the shorter side. We are going to keep active duplicate image, then create edge mask and 28-bit are both selected. I don't apply any watermark to my images, but for the sake of the tutorial we are going to add one. So we're going to click the loop tool and select the transparent PNG file with the watermark. Of course, you can use your custom file with your name or your logo. We're going to leave the opacity at 100% and the lower right corner as the watermark position. It's fine for me. And then we're going to drag the border slider to repositioning the watermark from the edges. To sharpen the image, we have two options. Quick sharpening is the easiest choice and 90% of the time it works beautifully on almost every image. In general, the default settings will give you perfectly fine results. However, my settings for the basic sharpening and details are 60 and 70. Then we just need to click the play icon to launch the action. And as you can see, the plugin created multiple layers, all adjustable and each one with a different purpose. We're not going to touch these layers today since I want to keep things as simple as I can. Anyway, if you want to have more control over the big and fine details, the sharpening standard section gives you the ability to adjust the amount of sharpening on the dark details and brighter details separately. Plus two extra options. The saturation compensation that helps to restore some of the lost saturation due to the details and noise that are introduced by the sharpening. I usually set this parameter at a value of 25, which works pretty well also to compensate for the slight image degradation during the conversion Instagram makes. And then the contrast compensation to compensate for a possible reduction of contrast after the sharpening stage. And here we are going to use my favorite value of 15. A bit higher than the default value, but that's my personal preference, so feel free to change them to your liking. The strength of each of these settings can be adjusted by changing the opacity level on their respective masks on the Photoshop Layers panel. If you're not happy with the results, again, to keep things simple, my suggestion is to close the newly generated image, refine settings and relaunch the sharpening action with the new values. Now, we've got a super detailed and perfectly resized image with the proper amounts of sharpening ready to be shared on Instagram. To save the image for the web, what we want to do is to select File on the top menu, then Export and Save for Web Legacy. On this window, we want to make sure to set up a few settings. The JPEG format, the quality value at 100% so you have the best quality. Make sure these two checkboxes are selected, the optimized and the embed color profile, and especially convert to sRGB, that's the proper color space for the web. In terms of metadata, I usually keep the copyright and contact info, quality by cubic, the image size perfect, 1080 as we selected on the Web Sharpener panel. And now we can hit save and select the folder where to save our output file. Let's rename the file as you wish and click save. From here, you can send the image to your smartphone via AirDrop to be uploaded on Instagram, or just using a web browser directly from your Mac or PC. If you feel your image still looks not completely razor sharp, you can apply an additional pass of sharpening using the Sharpen tool on the Instagram app. My go-to value is usually around 20, 30, and that's it. Before leaving, I want to quickly show you how to sharpen a sequence of multiple images in batch mode. Super easy process. Okay. Let's go back to the Web Sharpener panel, and we are going to click over Batch Sharpening to reveal the section's controls. We're going to click on this icon, and here we can select the folder from where to load the images to sharpen. I've already prepared some example images I exported from Lightroom in full resolution as TIFF 16-bit files, so we are going to select the source folder and hit open. Now we need to select the destination folder, so we're going to click on the output icon here below, and let's create a new folder for our final images and select open. We also have to make sure to have the JPEG checkbox selected, quality at 10, the format at the default settings, baseline optimized, and from here we can launch the quick batch sharpening or the standard batch sharpening. They work exactly the same way as the quick and standard sharpening we saw before, so we are basically gonna use the same settings we selected previously. Now we're gonna hit standard batch sharpening, and Photoshop starts to load automatically each image, applying all the resizing and sharpening stuff. And we will find the output images in the export folder we defined before. Pretty awesome, isn't it? Great! The web sharpening is brilliant, I love it. It works so well, it's very reliable, it's a time saver, and it's free. Actually, it's by donation, so if you find it useful for your work, you might consider making a small donation, it's well deserved. The same principle we discussed here for Instagram can be applied to any other social platform or your personal website. Okay, I hope you found this tutorial useful. I think this method is far superior to any kind of sharpening function in Capture One or Lightroom. For any questions, drop me a comment down below. If you haven't already, give the video a thumbs up, it helps me out a lot, and subscribe to the channel for more. In the meantime, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao!